Staying in South Africa, lawyers for former President Jacob Zuma were in court on Monday to argue for the private prosecution of prosecutor Billy Downer and journalist Karyn Maughan. Zuma is facing corruption charges in the High Court in Pietermaritzburg. It has taken Downer to task, claiming he is biased towards him and arguing for his removal as a prosecutor in the case. He accuses Maughan of accessing his medical records illegally, through Downer, and argues both should be held criminally liable as a result. Joining us now to understand this further is Mpumelelo Zikalala, a lawyer who has been following the case closely. A warm welcome to you, Mpumelelo.
Good evening to you, and also good evening to your viewers.
Now, Billy Downer has responded to Zuma's attempt at private prosecution, but saying he's abusing court processes and stalling for time. What do you make of this submission?
I do not think that he's making the correct submission. Let's also remember that you have the Criminal Procedure Act, which then says, if ever you've been charged, one of the defenses that you can raise, other than saying that you did not do whatever you've been accused of, is to say that the person who is prosecuting you does not have title to prosecute. Now, if there's a defense which is available within the Criminal Procedure Act, there's no need to institute separate civil proceedings, which at the end of the day will deliver more or less the similar results. So what you are then doing, or what Advocate Billy Downer seems to be doing, is engaging in a parallel process and putting the courts into a frenzy, because the court will now have to decide which options or which dispute resolution mechanism they have to stick with, either civil proceedings or the criminal procedure. I think the courts in this case, it would be safer for them to then say, there is a law that has been stated, which is the Criminal Procedure Act. It allows for instances such as these ones. And if you feel that there's a defense that you need to raise, saying that the person who's prosecuting you does not have title to prosecute, go and fight that and create this defense on those proceedings, but do not circumvent or try to short-circuit the process by instituting your own on the side. But for now, we're going to listen to you because our doors are open when it comes to the administrative justice, but there is a law, which is the Criminal Procedure Act, that must be followed.
Now, Mpumelelo, Maughan has applied for the private prosecution against her to be scrapped entirely. She's a journalist who, at the time, was doing her work covering a court case. What will the court have to consider in this matter?
They will have to check the type of information that you are privy to as a journalist. Is the type of information that anyone could have had access to, or is there an element of biasness or certain information which was passed over to you when the time was not right for that particular information to be discussed? Let's go back. The National Prosecuting Act is very clear. It says that anything that you are going to find out or you're going to discover as a prosecutor within the course and scope of your employment must remain a secret and can only be rendered by an official individual who is designated to do that. In this case, it would be the spokesperson of the NPA. However, any information which then goes into the court file is then accessible and can be accessed by any member of the public, including journalists. So in this case, the court will going to have to determine at what point in time during the sequence of events and timelines was that information alerted to or provided over to the court, and did it land in the court file? And was it the time in which, at that point after that, did Ms. Karyn Maughan have access to it? If the answer to that is yes, that means she's innocent. However, if it is proved that she was then available or was given information which was privy or was not yet available for public consumption, then there may be a law or certain contravention that would have taken place. The next question would be, how did you get that information? Who told about that information? If it is Advocate Billy Downer, then he ought to understood that the code of conduct applies to him when it comes to the NPA, and he cannot disclose information in which he's not privy to disclose at all. Which is why, by the way, you have a person who's going to be regarded as a spokesperson of the NPA, and all information that must be rendered by prosecutors should go through the particular individuals and not through the prosecutors, as it was allegedly done in this case.
Has really focused on Billy Downer as a person, as character, taking issues with him personally. What do you make of Zuma's arguments that Billy Downer is biased?
I think on those ones, they're a bit unfounded. Yes, you do need a prosecutor who's going to be beyond reproach when it comes to the manner in which he does his job. However, the prosecutor is going to be biased towards his case. And his case is to say that this particular individual is guilty, and we've got reasonable suspicion and evidence which will help us to prove that particular case. Now, there's been a plethora of case law in South Africa that says you do not have a prosecutor who has to like you, but all that he needs to do is to prosecute in accordance with the Constitution, in accordance with the Criminal Procedure Act, and conduct themselves in line with the NPA Act. So if you've got all those particular processes or boxes ticked, then you have a prosecutor who's beyond reproach. Whenever you want to raise instances where you feel that your matter has been handled in a manner which is not in line with the administration of justice, there were various ways and means of doing that. But I don't think the argument which is going to be raised, or which is raised by the former president, of saying that Advocate Billy Downer is biased so that that means he cannot prosecute him, is not an argument that can hold water. And a prosecutor, in any case, is not going to like you. He ought not to like you, but all that he has to do is to prosecute you in line with the Constitution and applicable legislation.
Once the court has decided, how is that likely to affect former President Jacob Zuma's corruption case?
Let's remember that these are two parallel cases which are not mixed. So nothing stopping the former president from being prosecuted in the main case. You all know that that one has been set for a later date in the year, in which the first witnesses ought to go into the witness box and the evidence ought to be led. So these are two parallel processes which can't be mixed together. Of course, you can raise an argument of saying that, well, at the time in which I even took this matter up to the court, the prosecutor that I'm dealing with was not charged. But in this case, the prosecutor is charged. And what you have to think about that kind of report, do you want to have a prosecutor that is going to be tainted, or that is facing certain types of prosecution, especially by me? And the answer to that would be, you are regarded innocent until proven guilty. The same principles and the privileges that have been afforded to you and the right that has been afforded to you, let's afford the same to Advocate Billy Downer and allow him to prosecute you in a manner that he deems fit. If ever there are instances in which he is misbehaving, in instances where he has contravened any law, only then we will take action as the court, and that particular action must be in line with the applicable legislation. So for me, I don't think these two matters are going to have a bearing on each other. They are simply going to proceed in parallel structures as they are. However, it might sound a bit bizarre to say that today you have a prosecutor, the next day the same person who was prosecuting then becomes the accused. However, our laws allow that. And it's also in the interest of justice that we allow those processes to take place.
Thank you very much for your insights and your time, Mpumelelo Zikalala. We do appreciate it.
Thank you very much for hosting.